Close the doors of your mind from all carnal will, all carnal thought, all of your emotions, all of your desires, all of your fears, all of your laziness, all of your doubt, all of the hatred and jealousy and envy and complaining and pride and arrogance and forward mouth within your heart and your mind, all your thoughts in your mind and all the things within your belly that one has consumed, that has destroyed your inward man, that has destroyed your inner being, your inner thoughts. Bring your body into subjection to the highest order and to the one who sits in the highest Shamaim above all Allahims and all gods on the earth and in the Rakia and under the surface of the earth. Yahuwah Allahim with his son Yahusha, who sits at his right hand, who sits at his yad, his open right hand, that we may understand him as the one who will put all enemies under his feet, under his regal, from his Chdsh on his throne, on his sapphire, his sapphire throne. For today we acknowledge the one who made all of the har of the earth, all of the mountains and rivers and streams of the earth, the one who gives life and understanding, gives us rain and snow and water and meme to give life to our inner man and to wash us from all of our gilul, our idols within our heart and our mind. The one who gives us a heart and a mind to perceive and a heart of understanding, be not hakman da'af, within our inner being and our inner thoughts, within our hands and our feet, within our kidneys and our liver, within our heart, within our left and right ventricle, within our throat, within our heart and our mind, with our frontal lobe. Yahuwah Allahim. So this Yom, as we move forward in kindness. We move forward in his kindness. We move forward in his love. We move forward in his joy, in his shalom, his peace, his patience, his meekness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Knowing through him we have our being, we live and we understand all things. It's through him that we understand all things. And we have perfect understanding in all things, continually in this life. So if we move forward and focus on the one who gave his life for us, who was in the Son, and reconciling the world to himself. Right, so this Ode Shalom, Ode to Solomon, Pseudepigrapha, Volume 2, verse 22. Verse 22. And it says, "He who caused me to descend from on high and to ascend from the regions below, and he who gathers what is in the middle and throws them to me." What he said, "He who scattered my enemies and my adversaries." He said, who is that? That when Yahuwah sent his son to the earth, right? Yahuwah sent Yahusha Mashiach to the earth, right? We're going to Proverbs. I don't have nothing written up. Proverbs chapter 3 and verse 1. Proverbs chapter 3 and verse 1. No, Proverbs chapter 30. Let's go to Proverbs chapter 30. Mashali Proverbs chapter 30 and verse 1. Proverbs chapter 30 and verse 1. Mashali Proverbs chapter 30 verse 1. It says, "The word of Agur, the son of Aydahchay, the oracle. The man declares, I am weary, O Allahim." He said, I am weary. I am weary, O Allahim, and worn out. He said, I'm tired. You know how you know when you're tired and worn out? He says, I'm gonna have, in the book of Ecclesiastes, right? Go to Qahalath chapter 12, verse 1. Ecclesiastes, Qahalath chapter 12. That's how you know when you're tired, right? This is Ecclesiastes chapter 12, go to verse 11. Go to Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 11. Actually, verse 12. It says, Ecclesiastes Qahalath 12 and 12. "My son, beware of anything beyond these, of making many books. There is no end." He said, it's gonna wear you out. "And much study is weariness to the flesh." It make the flesh tired. You know how you wear the flesh out? You know how Satan try to get to your flesh and try to get you to wear out in your ruach, man, and he punch you and hit you and kick you and try to get you to do things that's outside of the character of Yahuwah. Well, when you start studying these books and you start reading the Torah, you start Haggah, you start meditating and pondering on these things continually, it'll wear your flesh out. Your flesh ain't gonna have nowhere to go. Ain't gonna have nowhere to hide, ain't gonna have nowhere to do. And you know why I don't have nothing to do? You know why I ain't gonna have nothing else to do? No sin to try to commit. Verse 13, the end of the matter, the end of all that studying and all that is this. All has heard. Fear Elohim and keep his commandments. Mitzvah, right? For this is the whole duty of Adam, of man. For Elohim will bring every deed into judgment and every secret thing, whether good or evil. Right? So that's how you know in Proverbs chapter 30 what he was thinking about. Let's go there. Go back to Proverbs chapter 30 and verse 1. It says, Proverbs 30 and 1. It says, the word of our God, the son of Chdsh, the oracle. Right? The man declares, I am weary, O Elohim, I am weary and worn out. Surely I am too stupid to be a man, and I have not the understanding of a man. I have not learned wisdom, Hukmah, nor have I knowledge of the Qahalath. He's like, I don't know anything. He said, even though I am weary, he said, I don't know anything. And you know what he says? Who has ascended from Shamayim and come down? Who did that? Who ascended from Shamayim and came down? When Yahushua left this earth. He said, while standing here gazing in Acts chapter 1, why are you standing looking up in the Shamayim? For this same Yahushua who was taken is coming back in like manner, just like Yahoo was taken. Just like Hanuk was taken. They're going to come back in like manner. They coming right back here. And he said, why are they coming back here? And it says, I have learned Hukmah, I have not learned wisdom, nor have I the knowledge of the Qahalath. Who has ascended to Shamayim and come down? Who has gathered the wind in his fist? Who said, who can gather the wind in his fist? Who has wrapped up the waters in the garment? When Yahushua was on the total in the ship, and the winds and the waves were turning in Mark chapter 4, and there all of them were asking, you don't care that we perish? And he gathered the wind in his fist, and he said, Shalom. They said, who gathered the wind in his fist? And he said, I don't even know. I don't have wisdom or understanding. Well, there you go. He said, now you know. He said, who ascended in the Shamayim and come down? Yahushua told you in John 6:65, he said, I am the bread which came down from Shamayim. I am the lakam that came down from Shamayim that Adam was going to eat all the days of his life until he goes back to the dust. According to Bereshit chapter 3, Genesis chapter 3. He said, I am that bread, the lakam, that was his punishment. He was going to eat that to the day he go till he go right back to the dust. He said, that's me. And he says, who has wrapped up the waters in the garment? He said, who gathered all the waters in the garment? He said, how you gather all waters in a garment? Right, you're going to Bereshit, Genesis chapter 1. Genesis chapter 1 and verse 1. Bereshit chapter 1 and verse 9. Bereshit chapter 1 verse 9. Bereshit chapter 1 verse 9. And it says, and Elohim said, let the waters under Shamayim be gathered together in one place. He said, how you gather all the waters in a garment? And where? And let the dry land appear. He said, let all the water gathered in one place and let the dry land appear. That's the only way you're going to get rid of the sea. How you say the sea was in one spot, Yom, then he said, let the waters disappear and let the dry land appear. And guess what? And it was so. And Elohim called the dry land earth, and the waters he gathered together he called seas, and Elohim saw that it was good. He said, so he gathered the water, and he got all the water in one place. He gathered all the water in one place, and then he said, let the dry land appear, right? He said, how you do all that? How you do all of that? And you know the sad part about it? He said, this is easy, right? This is what he said, my yoke is easy, my burden is light. He said, take your yoke upon me and learn from me. I am meek and lowly, because the meek going to inherit the earth. And you shall find rest for your souls. Right, going to Exodus, Shamuth chapter 10 and verse 17. Shamuth, Exodus chapter 10, verse 17. Shamuth, Exodus chapter 10, verse 17. It says, and now therefore forgive my sins, please, only this once. How many times have we said that? We said, how many times we had to say forgive our sins? You know, we say, forgive us our sins only this once. Now, we done did that. How many times you done did that in your life? Come on. We just read last week, he said, any man say he ain't never sinned. He said, how you going to say you ain't never sinned in Fort Baruch? He said, you can't say you ain't, a man going to say he ain't never sinned. He said, you're going to heap coals of fire on your head, right, before you even to say that out of your mouth. He says, now therefore forgive my sin, please, only this once, and plead with Yahuwah, your Elohim, only to remove this death from me, right? So you think about that. So what do you think? What do you think Pharaoh doing right now? That's us. That's us every week. He said some people every week. That's us every year. Matter of fact, that's everybody. He said we don't know nothing. You think you know? He said we just like Pharaoh. You know what he says? He said only this once, please. And he says that he will forgive me from this death. So he went out from Pharaoh and pleaded with Yahuwah, and Yahuwah turned the wind into a very strong west wind, which lifted up the locusts and drove them into the Red Sea. That's what we do. We look for temporary fixes in our life, because they ain't gonna fix us with righteous repentance. We ask for something, and then guess what happens? We get the results, and then know what we do? Just like we talked about last week, we sin still. We continue to sin. But he said, how you gonna gather all the waters in the garment? Let's finish that up. And he says, not a single locust was left in all the country of Mizraim, but Yahuwah hardened Pharaoh's heart. See? He hardened his heart, even after he gave him deliverance. So why he hardened your heart after he gave you deliverance in something? Because he still got some things inside of your heart that he got to fix. Because he need your heart to get hardened so you can manifest the very thing that's inside of your heart that needs to be corrected. And so that's the only reason he allowed these events to happen in your life, or these things to happen. And he did not let the people go. He said, and that's what happens to you. You can't let something go either. And Yahuwah made you that way because he still got some things inside of you that he got to fix. It may not be the actual, your hard-heartedness to not let somebody go may not be what you actually think. It could be just a nerve damage. Like somebody got on your nerves. It could be something so simple and minute. Like you could have a toothache, and that's causing back pain in your sciatic nerve to actually resonate and causing you to have migraines. You can't think properly when you hear the word, the bar. Like it could be all types of things. Right, so going to Exodus 14:21. And it says, then Moshe stretched out his hand over the sea. Exodus chapter 14, verse 21, Exodus 14:21. It said, then Moshe stretched out his hand over the sea, and Yahuwah drove the sea back by a strong east wind all night, and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. He said, I gathered all the water in one place. Matter of fact, he said, let the dry land appear. He did that for the Yam, the sea. He said, how are you able to do all that? Who's going to gather all the waters in a garment? Can you do that? Who he said, and Yahuwah drove the sea back. Who you think gathered all the water in a garment, in one place? And he drove the sea back and let the dry land appear. And you know what happened? And the people of Yasharah went into the midst of the sea on dry ground, the waters being a wall to them on the right and a wall to them on the left. He's like, how you get all these people? How there ain't no more sea now? It was just a sea right there in the middle of our face. And amazingly, we just walked right on top of it. He said, who gathers all the waters together? Who does all of that? Right? They're all divided. Right? How does that even happen? How does that even happen, right? This is the book of Revelations. Hazum. Book of Revelation, Hazum, chapter 21. Revelation chapter 21 and 1. He said, then I saw a new Shamayim and a new Aydahs. He said, I saw a new one and a new Aydahs. The first Shamayim and the first Aydahs had passed away. How many? He said the first Shamayim. How many Shamayims are there? And you know what he said? They passed away, and the sea was no more. Why do you think he separated the waters from the waters on the left and the right? Why do you think there was no more sea, and they were able to walk across on dry ground? How did he able to do that fast? And get what he said. And I saw the Chdsh city, New Jerusalem. He saw what? And I saw Chdsh, Jerusalem, coming down from Shamayim, from Elohim, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband, just like a woman adorned for her husband. Because when a woman, when this bride, this Shamayim gets joined to her husband, she's gonna be a beautiful virgin, without spot or wrinkle, without any type of defects within her body, in her thoughts, in her mind. And ain't gonna have no hard heart, because you can't get married to this man, this husband, again with a hard heart. You can't. There's no way. Right? And it says, and I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, behold, the dwelling place of Elohim is with man. He's like, he finally came down here. He finally came here. He will dwell with them, and they will be his people. Then he bring the people. He said they're going to be his people again. He said, how you gather all the waters together in a garment? He said, how you do all of that? And it says right here, and Elohim himself will be with them as their Elohim. He's going to be with them, and he's going to be their Elohim. And amazingly, he says, and he will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Oh, they're going to cry. That means they are sensitive and tenderhearted, which means that they made as Psalms 109 say, he said they're going to make their bread, their ashes, their bread, and their tears their drink. And he said, I'm going to wipe away all your tears, because you are tenderhearted. You actually have some remorse and some reaction to the things that you did. Not like Pharaoh, who had a hard heart, and he went right back, and who will harden his heart again. They had a tender heart. That's why I said, sometimes you just need to cry. You have to cry. That's the only thing left. How is he going to wipe away your tears when you never cried before? I'm hard, right? I'm stone-hearted, right? I'm stone cold, right? You take on these characters, and then guess what happens? No eternal life for you. It ain't no attack, but I'm just saying, we take on these personalities, and then you have no emotion whatsoever. You become desensitized, and that's when it becomes dangerous. And he will dwell with them, and they will be his people. And Elohim himself will be with them as their Elohim. And he will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall no more. And he said, and death shall be no more. And then what Pharaoh said? Please, please, this is one time, forgive my sins, that this death may go away from me. You know what he did? And it says, neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain anymore. Ain't gonna be no pain like Adam and Cool. As we talked about last week, it's a bone, it's a bone. In pain, you're gonna bring forth children. In pain, you're gonna till the ground. Ain't gonna be no more pain anymore. Adam and Cool, those who came out from him, who believe in his image and likeness, ain't gonna be no more of that. And get what? For the former things have passed away. He said, all that stuff you had before, you know what it's going to go back to? It's going to go back to how it was before Adam and Korah transgressed. All that former things that you experienced is going to be gone, because Adam and them never had it before. Verse 5 says, and he who was seated on the Chdsh, the throne, said, behold, I am making all things new. That's why he likes new. That's why new things always feel good to you. You ever got something new, brand new, and you drove it, or you got into a new house, or you got into something brand new, and you know that feeling you get? Imagine that feeling never going away. You know how much joy that is? Like, we go in this temporary world, it depreciates. And once we have it for a year, then we lose the joy inside of it, and then it goes away. But he said, how can you maintain your joy in the midst of all of that? when you know things are deteriorating, you know things are passing away, how can you maintain your joy on the inside when you know it's going to eventually be gone and you're going to have to leave it behind? But it says right here, also he said, write this down, for these words are trustworthy and true. You know how we talked about in the ascension of Yeshayahu, he said there are going to be many prophets, not be in those days, but he said it ain't going to be what? No trustworthy words spoken in the ascension of Yeshayahu on the eve of Yahushua Mashiach's return. He said these are trustworthy and true. We just went through the whole thing that fast. Are they not? It says, and he said to me, it is done. I am the Aleph and the Tut. I am the Aleph, I'm the strength. I'm the first letter of the alphabet. I'm the strength, lead about 1,000. I'm the beginning. And guess what he also said? I am the Tut, Omega. I am the Tut. You know, he put Omega, but Tut. What is that? That's the 22nd letter of the alphabet. That is sign, signature, exit, 4 corners. He said, I am the 23. When you add them up. And he said the beginning and the end. The beginning of the alphabet and the end of the alphabet. Get what he said? To the thirsty, I will give from the spring of water of life without payment. That's why when you breathe in and you breathe out, you look at the 13th letter of the alphabet, and that is the meme. You look at the mem, that is what? Fountain, river, fountain, spring. Matter of fact, it also means chaos. He said, you're going to get it without payment. You ain't had to pay for it. You know how you can go outside, you can breathe in right now, and you can get it without payment. You ain't got to pay for it. I got to pay to breathe? No, I just go outside and breathe. You ain't got to pay for that. That's free. You could go breathe in the Shama Ruach right there outside and become a Kai Nefesh again and again and again. You could do that every morning, every day, every Bakar before the sun rise. And guess what? You a living soul. You can do that, and it's free. You ain't got to pay for it. Until these, how you say, these crooked people start to poison the air, and then you gotta like, should I breathe today? And then they try to give you oxygen, sell you an oxygen tank online for $50. And you gotta get it refilled every 20 days like gas. Isn't that something? And they can do that. Would you want to live in a world like that? And he said, you know why? He said, you know why you need to? He said, he that believes in me, as the scripture said, I was belly shall flow rivers of living water. He said, you need to believe on Yahushua Mashiach. That's why you need to believe on him, because he came to set the captives free. You want to go to that world, or you want to be free? Verse 7, the one who conquers will have this heritage. He said, the one who conquers. He said, that's going to be, if you conquer yourself, you're going to have this heritage. And I will be his Elohim, and he will be my son. Huh? He going to be my what? My son. You know how he says, my son. You get what it says? But as for the cowardly, so you can't be a coward. And he said, you got to get some courage. He said, you got to get some real courage. Who gathered the waters together in the garment? What's his name? He said, you're going to have courage. Why you going to need courage for? But as for the cowardly and the faithless, the detestable, and as for the murderers, he said, how do you know you're a murderer? The sexual immoral, because you know that's the root of your problem. He said, you're going to need to have a little bit more, you're going to need to conquer these things in your life. Your amunah. Right? Look at the detestable things that Yahuwah hates. 6 things Yahuwah hates, 7 are abomination. Look at the murderers. He said the sexual immoral, that's in your loins, in between your left and your right legs. Right? The things that's rooted inside of you. The strongest energy on earth right now. But without it, nothing will be here. The sorcerers, he said, the idolaters, and all liars. Their portion will be in the lake that burns with fire and sulfur, which is the second death. So you look at all the things you got to conquer in this life. within yourself. But he said, who gathered all the waters together in a garment? He said, why would he do that? Because it's important for him to do that. He said, how do you even do something like that, right? You're going to Revelation, Hazum 17. Revelations, Hazum, chapter 17, verse 15. It says, and the Malak said to me, the waters that you saw, 17, Hazum, Revelation 17, 15. The waters that you saw where the prostituted seated are peoples and multitudes and nations and languages. He said, how you gather all these people together in a garment? He said, how you gather them all together in a garment? Because you know what a garment is used for, right? What is the garment used for? It's used to cover something. Like when you get covered, he said, I'm covered. You know. He said, how many times you've been covered before? Because sometimes you need to be covered. Right? Go in the book of Job. Actually, yeah, go to the book of Aydah. Job. The book of Job, chapter 15. Aydah, chapter 15, and verse 20. Aydah, Job, chapter 15, verse 20. It said, the wicked man reaps in pain all his days. And he said he's going to get rid of all pain. Ain't going to be no more pain anymore. How you think Adam was a pain? You're going to be for children pain. He's trying to show you your sin. He said all his days, through all years that are laid up for the ruthless. Dreadful sounds are in his ears. In prosperity, the destroyer will come upon him. He said, that's what Satan do. Like we'd be thinking, like, hey, when you get your prosperity, here comes Satan. He come to steal, kill, destroy. That's the life we live. People say, yeah, that's how life is. That's why when you get things, you have to be ready. He's like, here he comes. You know, I would say when you get something, when you get prosperity, he goes Satan stretching, doing his exercise. He doing high knees. He doing A skips, B skips. He doing everything he can. He getting ready, right? He's like, yep, he about to get it, and here I come. Right? He getting warmed up. That's how he operates. That's where we live at. But he said right here, verse 21, dreadful sounds are in his ears, and prosperity, the destroyer will come upon him. He does not believe that he will return. He does not believe he will return out of darkness, and he is marked for the sword. Why? Because when you get into those dark times in your life, he said the only thing they're gonna bring you out is he said you're already marked. He's like, it's already there. He wanders abroad for bread, saying, where is it? Oh, there you go, the bread again. Lacan. He said, where the bread at? And then he told Adam, thorns and thistles are going to yield you. And then he said, from the foot of your brow, you're going to till the ground. He said, you're going to eat the plants of the earth. You're going to eat Lacan to the day of your death. He said, I'm going to be looking for that bread. Where the bread at? He's like, man, thorns and thistles. Here we go. More thorns and thistles. But that's all part of it. Because it's a birthing process. He knows that a day of darkness is ready at hand. He said, you should know this. We just talked about in fourth algebra, and also in second Baruch. We talked about how there's going to be things on the earth. He said, settle in your mind. We're in the 12th part. We know darkness at hand, because the day of Yahuwah is going to be a day of darkness and no light. It's as a man fled from a bear and a lion into their house, and a serpent bit him. Since distress and anguish terrify him, they prevail against him like a king ready for battle. Because he has stretched out his hand against Elohim and defies the Almighty, running stubbornly against him with a thickly bossed shield. He said, you real crazy, ain't you? He said, and it's bossed. You know, I say, I don't know, it's bossed shield, like they say. Verse 27, because he has covered his face with his fat and gathered fat upon his waist. He said, you cover your face with fat and you gather fat upon his waist. He said, you covered in fat. You think they're going to protect you. And he says, and has lived in desolate cities and houses, and none should inhabit, which were ready to become heaps of ruins. It says, he will not be rich, and his wealth will not endure, nor will his possessions spread over the earth. He will not depart from darkness. The flame will dry up his shoots, and the breath of his mouth he will depart. Let him not trust in emptiness. Let him not trust in emptiness, deceiving himself, for emptiness will be his payment. Because the wages of sin is death. He said, you're going to run at Yahuwah with a shield and with fat all around you, you thinking that's going to save you. And you know why? He said, why he got fat? Because that's what they offered up for animals for their sin. They burned the fat. For the sin offering, the ox and the goat. But get what it says. Verse 32. It will be paid full before his time, and his branch will not be green. He said, you ain't going to yield no fruit. Killing them animals and having sin offerings everywhere, you ain't going to bear no fruit. He will shape off and he will shape off his unripe grape like the vine. He said you're going to shake off your unripe grape like the vine. He said your vine ain't going to yield anything. You know what happens? And cast off his blossoms like the olive tree. Then we talk about olive tree. And we talk about the grapevine. How you supposed in the year of Jubilee, you supposed to leave it for the poor and the needy. In the book of Shemot. In the year of Jubilee. And for the animals, just like Adam. But he said, man, your grapevine and all that stuff, it ain't even gonna yield nothing. And your olive tree. He said, you're gonna look for it. He said, cast off your blossoms and your olive tree. You're gonna forsake it all. Because the olive is used to make the lamps continually burn. And the wine, how you say, was to make men glad. But it says right here, verse 34, for the company of the godless is barren, huh? Is barren. Rejoice, O woman that bearest not, for more are the children of destruction than she that has a husband. It says, and fire consumed the tents of bribery. They conceived trouble and gave birth to evil. Huh? They consumed the tents of bribery. And what? They conceived trouble and give birth to evil. He said, you give birth. Break forth and cry, O thou that bearest not. This is what you want to bear. Break forth into singing, but you can bear this too, being that you bearing. You can give birth to this type of behavior. It says, and they conceive trouble and give birth to evil, and their wound prepares deceit. Their wound prepares deceit. He said, so what are you pregnant with? And you're going to be like, Pharaoh, please forgive me for my sin this one time and deliver me from this death. But he said, look within yourself, right? Because he said, how does one understand this? Because all of this is a part of it. All of this is a part of it. Because when you start to understand this, then you start to understand it, right? Right. This book of Yeshayahu, Isaiah. This book of Isaiah, chapter 61, verse 10. Yeshayahu, chapter 61, verse 10. He said, who gathered all of the waters in a garment? All the people, nations, and tongues. How he do all that? Right. This is the book of Yeshayahu, chapter 61, verse 10. He said, I will greatly rejoice in Yahuwah, my soul, nefesh, right, shall exalt in my Elohim. For he has clothed me with the garments of salvation. That's how. He said, who has ascended the Shamayim and come down? What's his name and what's his son's name? He said, he clothed me with salvation, garments of salvation. He has covered me with the robe of righteousness. That's how you're going to gather all those people. That's how you gather all the people in a garment. Who did that? Who gathered all the people in righteousness in a garment? Matter of fact, as a bridegroom decks himself like a priest with a beautiful headdress. It just like the bridegroom decks himself to be married. Because you just saw New Jerusalem come down, the bride adorned for her husband. And guess what happened? And as a bride adorns herself with her jewels. Her jewels. You know, that's what all the, because the jewelry was made for women. I reread it in First Enoch. He said, look at all these people, look at these men. They wear more jewels than women. Because women's supposed to have the jewels on. But here we go. This is right here. And it says, verse 11, for as the earth brings forth its sprout, and as a garden causes it, what is sown in it, to sprout up. When that happened? On the third day. On the very same day that he gonna gather all the waters in one place. He said the dry land appeared. You know what happened after that? It says, so Yahuwah Elohim will cause righteousness and praise to sprout up before all nations. He said he's gonna cause it to sprout up. And halal, praise before all men. You know what praise is? That's singing. Break forth into singing, thou barren one, that bearest not. He said, you were utterly cast away. I hid my face, but, as Yeshayahu wrote, in my abundant compassion, I'm going to gather you in a garment of righteousness. Matter of fact, I'm going to gather you in a garment of righteousness, and I'm going to present you to a husband. Without some things inside of you. But he said, I'm going to gather you in righteousness and cover you. Right? So we're going back to, this is Pseudepigrapha, chapter, verse 22. Ode to Solomon, Ode Shalom, volume 2, Ode to Solomon, chapter 22, and verse 3. Actually, verse 1. It says, he who caused me to descend from on high and to ascend from the regions below. Right? And it says, because Yahushua was 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. And you know what he did? He rose, Yahuwah caused him to rise. Let it say right here. Verse 2, and he who gathers what is in the middle and throws them to me. He who scatters my enemies and my adversaries. And he who gave me authority over chains so that I might loosen them. He said, I can loosen chains. You know how people want to put you in prison? He said, I can loosen chains too. Right? This is Luke chapter 4, verse 16. Luke chapter 4, verse Luke Uriah 4, verse Luke 4 and 15. Luke 4 and 15. And it says, Luke 4:16. And he came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up. And he, as his custom was, he went into the congregation, the people, the assembly on the Shabath day, and he stood up to read. He stood up to read what? He stood up to read. What do you mean he stood up to read? He stood up to read and do what? And the scroll of the Nabi, Yeshayahu, was given to him. You know, the same scroll where he said, no weapon formed against me shall prosper. Every tongue that rises against me in judgment, I'm going to condemn. But also that same book where he's going to gather the barren women. What you talking about, that same book? And what did he say? And the scroll of the Nabi, Yeshayahu, was given to him. And he unrolled the scroll and found a place where it was written. So he had to literally open the book, turn some pages, and go find where it was actually written at. That's what he had to do. He had to unroll the scroll and he had to go through all the words. Then he had to get all the way to where Yeshayahu wrote it at. In our Brilishim. And it said right here, it says right, verse 18, he said, the Ruach is upon me. He said, the Ruach of Yahuwah is upon me, because he has anointed me, he must shock me, to proclaim good news to the poor, to he has sent me to proclaim liberty to what? Freedom to the captives, to those who are in chains. You know what? And recovering your sight to the blind, and set at liberty those who are oppressed, to proclaim the year of Yahuwah's favor. So all that happened, right? Going back to Ode Shalom, chapter 22, verse 4. It says, he who gave me authority over the chains, it's Odes of Solomon 22 and 4. I'm sorry. Odes of Solomon 22 and 4, Pseudepigrapha, volume 2. Ode Shalom 22 and 4. He who gave me authority over the chains, so that I might loosen them. He who overthrew by my hands the dragon, Satan, with 7 heads. With 7 heads. And you know what happened? And placed me at his roots, that I might destroy his seed. He placed me at the roots of the dragon with the 7 heads, and placed me at his roots, that I might destroy his seed. See, that's the only way you're going to be able to destroy the things inside of you. You got to get to the very first day when it happened. You got to get to the roots. That's how you're going to destroy the seed. The seed ain't going to be destroyed by cutting off a branch of a tree, or something that's been sown in your mind for a long time from youth that one can't get rid of. The seed go all the way back to the person who sold it. The human being, the person who sold it, or it can be in yourself, or you've seen something. That's where the seed came from. He said, you got to get to the root of the problem. He said, and that right there gonna make them people uncomfortable when you start getting to the root of the problem. He's like, you sowed that seed in me a long time ago. And you know what that's gonna do to them other people? It's gonna make them want to repent. Because it all works hand in hand. But if you never get to the root of the problem, how is anybody else gonna be saved? How? Verse 6. You were there, you were there and helped me. He's like, you were there and you helped me. And in every place your name surrounded me. Your right hand, your yah, your open right hand destroyed the evil poison. He said, my yah, your open right hand. He who holds the 7 stars in the right hand. But you see here, he said, I destroyed them 7 heads. I destroyed them. And you know what happened after that? He said, your right hand destroyed the evil poison. Who can bind the sweet influences of Mahadana? And the Kima and the Ketzil. And Mazarov and the constellations. He said, who can do that? Who can bind it up? Who can break the bands of Orion or Raynos? Yahuwah is his name. He said, your right hand destroyed the evil poison, and your hand leveled the way for those who believe in you. He said, level the way out. Right, and they go right here. And it chose them from the graves. How you think you're gonna get up? How you think you're gonna get out of, how you think you're gonna get up from the grave on the first resurrection? And you don't know your alphabet. He did that with the yod. His open right hand, attainment, gain. He did that with his yod. He said, what did he say? He said, you're going to, Shamar Amar Ben, he said, Shamar Amar Ben Adam, he said, you're going to hear his voice. He said in the dead and Muth, he said, Muth Mashiach Kum Rashon. They're going to rise first. But it says right here, it says, and it chose them from the graves and separated them from the dead ones. So you're going to separate, he said, you know how he separated them from the dead ones? He said he chose them from the grave and he separated them from the dead ones. Right? This Bereshit chapter 1 and verse 1. Bereshit chapter 1, verse 1. And it says, in the beginning, Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning, Elohim created the shamayim and the earth was without form and void, and darkness over the face of the deep. And the ruach of Elohim was ruach marakav al-panim, or hovering upon the face of the waters. And Elohim or Amar, right? Elohim said, or Ahaya, let there be light. And Elohim saw the light, or it was good. And Elohim badal the light from the darkness. He separated light from the darkness. It's badal. He separated them. He separated you from the dead ones. Those who are in darkness in mind and consciousness and can't see that the world is changed and that it's utterly been destroyed. You can't see that the giant tree's been cut down. You can't see that one grape ain't yielding one bottle of wine anymore. You can't see that the earth, the water that you drinking salt out of, the water that you drinking out of the ocean is salt water, and you don't know why. You don't even know why. That the land masses are so split apart. You don't even know. You don't even know why Yahushua came. He said, I separated you from the dead ones. He said, but those who are awakened, it says, and it chose them from the graves and separated them from the dead ones. And it took dead bones and covered them with flesh. He said, he did what? He took them dead bones. He said he covered them with flesh. He said, what did he do with that? He said, this is the book of Ezekiel. Right, book of Ezekiel, chapter 37, and verse 1. Yakaziel, chapter 37, verse 1. Right, he said, the hand, what hand you think that was? Of Yahuwah was upon, what hand you think that was? If you know your alphabet, everybody don't know that alphabet. So he said, what hand you think that was? Your hand was upon me and brought me out in the ruach of Yahuwah and set me in the middle of the valley. He set me right in the midst, and it was full of bones. And he led me around among them, and behold, there were very many on the surface of the valley, and behold, they were very dry. He said, man, they very dry. And he said to me, son of Adam, can these bones live? How can you live without water? How can you live? How can you live without meaning? How can you live without meaning? How can you live without the 13th letter of the alphabet? How? How are you going to live? Behold, they were very dry. And he said to me, son of Adam, can these bones live? And I answered, O Yahuwah Elohim, you know. Then he said to me, Naba over these bones, and say to them, O dry bones, hear Shema Debar Yahuwah. So he's talking to bones. Dry. Because you need water to live. You need mean to live. You need the 13th letter of the alphabet. You need to be a Ka to live. And get what it says. Thus says Yahuwah Elohim, these bones, behold, I will cause breath to enter you, and you, it says, here's verse 5. Thus says Yahuwah Elohim, to these bones, behold, I will cause breath to enter you, and you shall live. Right? Yakaziel chapter 37, verse 37. Right? You're going to look at that word, right? Because people, Yakaziel chapter 37, Ezekiel chapter 37, verse 37, and the word for breath is that word for we just read. He said, thus says Yahuwah Elohim, behold, I will cause ruach, the word for breath is ruach, to enter, to bow what? To enter. I will cause the ruach to enter, and it shall what? You shall kaya. Kaya. The word for live is kaya. Not kai, but kaya. Because you know kaya is male. With the at the end, that's female. So you got male and female. I'm going to cause male and female to live, kaya. I'm going to cause Adam to live. Matter of fact, it says it means to revive, to become life. Right? That's what he's going to do. He's going to make it come to life. Right? You're going back to Ezekiel, chapter 6, 37:6. And I will lay sinews upon them, and I will cause flesh to come upon them, and cover you with skin, and put breath in you, and you shall live. He said, what? And you shall know that I am Yahuwah. He said, I'm going to do all that. He said, I'm going to put breath in you, and you're going to live. He said, I'm going to put breath in them. I'm going to put the Ruach in you, and you're going to live. I'm going to put the Ruach in you, and you're going to live. Right? This Genesis chapter 1. Actually, go to Genesis chapter 2. Genesis chapter 2 and verse. Genesis chapter 2 and verse 6. Bereshit chapter 2, verse 6. And in the mist, it says, Bereshit chapter 2, Genesis chapter 2, verse 6. And a mist was going up from the land and was watering the whole face of the ground. Then Yahuwah Elohim formed Adam from the dust of the ground of Yadama and breathed Nafak in his nostrils, the neshama of life. He said he breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. He said he breathed into him. You know what he just did? He said, I'm gonna breathe into you and I'm gonna give you the Ruach. He said, I'm gonna breathe into you and I'm gonna give you the Ruach. And guess what you're gonna do? He said, you're gonna live. And you know what happens when you live? That means you can cause other people to live. You can cause other people to live. Right? And he said he breathed into man's nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living creature. I say Kai Nafash. And Elohim planted, and Yahuwah Elohim planted a Gan in Eden, and in the east, and there he put the man whom he had formed. Right. That's what he does with his east wind. Right? But it said right here, going back to ODE, Odes of Solomon. We're gonna get out of here. ODE Shalom, Odes of Solomon. Chapter 22, verse 9. It says, and he took dead bones and covered them with flesh. And what he just did, he did about a Ruach. But they were motionless, so it gave them energy for life. What gave it energy for life? His Ruach. His Ruach gave them energy for life. That's what gives you energy for life. The Ruach Qahalath. Verse 11 says, incorruptible was your way and your face, your panim. You have brought your world to corruption, that everything might be broken and renewed. That it might be broken and revived by the Ruach. And the foundation of everything is your rock. I liken to a wise man, a woman who builds her house on a rock. You know what happens? And upon it you have built your kingdom. Upon Kaf. He said you built your kingdom. And you know what happened? And it became a dwelling place of your Qahalath ones. He said of your Qahalath ones. He said, so how is that even important? Right, so this is the book of Psalm chapter 45 and verse 1. 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 It says, my heart overthrows with a pleasing theme. I address my verses to the Malak, the king. My tongue is like a pen of a ready scribe. He said, my tongue. He said, like a pen of a ready scribe, because, you know, we didn't take our beliefs by pen and ink. By Penuel. You are the most handsome of the sons of Adam. Khan is poured out upon your lips. Therefore, Elohim has baraked you forever. Gird up your sword on your thigh, O mighty one, in splendor and majesty. Why would he say that? He said, splendor and majesty. In your majesty, ride out viciously for the cause of truth and meekness and righteousness. Let your right hand teach you awesome deeds. Let your right hand teach you awesome deeds. Your yod. So if you don't know your yod, how do you know what your right hand is? It says, your arrow are sharp, and it says, in the heart of the king's enemies, the people fall under you. Your throne, O Elohim, is forever and ever. It's forever and ever. Your Chdsh, the scepter of your kingdom is a scepter of uprightness. You have loved righteousness and hated wickedness. He gathered everybody in the garment of righteousness. Why would he gather people in wickedness? He said that's in the second resurrection. Therefore, Elohim, your Elohim, has anointed you with the oil of gladness beyond your companions. Your robes are all fragrant with myrrh and aloes and cassia. From ivory places and stringed instruments makes you glad, daughters of the king. He makes you glad. Daughters of the king are among your ladies of honor. Huh? He said, daughters of the Malak, the king is ladies of honor. And you know what happens? At your right hand, you notice how you keep talking about the right hand? You know, when you walk with, you walk with a woman, they take your right hand. And you hold them with the right hand. And you take them by the right hand. And you walk with them with your right hand. And you lead them. If they're on the right side with their left hand. And you got a yod and a kaf joined together. You got a yod and a kaf joined together. And it says, at your right hand stands the queen, the Malka, in gold Ophir. He said, she full of gold. At your right hand, she gold. How you think who she gonna come back? A bride adorned for her husband? She got gold on the right hand, on the yard. Because you know, out of the river, out of the Garden of Eden, there were 4 rivers. He said, man, one had so much gold. He said, hear, O daughters, and consider and incline your ear. He's like, man, listen, look at here. You see what I just explained to you? So he talking to a woman. He said, listen up. Bride of Mashiach. Woman. Hear, O daughter, and consider and incline your ear. He said, incline your ear, your ozen, your ear, your right ear. Forget your people and your father's house. He said, look at, do you just see what I described to you? He said, forget your people and your father's house. He said, why would you still be thinking about your people, your father's house and your people when you got all this? And the king, he said, and the king will desire your beauty. He said, I don't even desire your beauty. He said, you beautiful, but for some reason you can't forget your father's house and your people. He said, you can't forget them. So he like, you want this type of malak, this king, but yet you can't forget your father's house and your people. And he said, I'll desire your beauty. Since he is your master, he said, bow to him. Amazingly, that's what he said, everybody gonna be regal at his feet. You're gonna be right at his regal. At his feet, under his sapphire feet, under his throne. You're going to be sitting there. And amazingly, he said, forget your people. You know what? And people say, why he say that? Right, this is the book of, there's a reason why he said that. There's a reason why he said that. There's a reason why he said that. Because we say, people say, I want to live. Okay. it says right here, this is the book of Matthew. This is the book of Matthew, chapter 10 and verse 34. Matthew chapter 10, verse 34. Matthew chapter 10, verse 34. It says, do not think that I have come to bring peace, shalom, to the earth. He said, I ain't come to bring no peace, right? When he was in this part right here. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. Why? Why he said it? Because it's a sword, it's a sheath after you. Because he come to separate, we just read, the dead ones from the living ones. He did it in the beginning. Then he badaled them. Those who were of light and those who were of darkness, he separated them with a sword. That's how he said, I come to bring peace on earth. Why? Because those people are going to be at war with you. Once he separate you, that runs. And you know what happens after that? Those people he separated to be light are going to be at peace. But it's always going to be something. Why you have to do that? Why you have to forget everything? Why you have to forget us? You in the palace house. You in the king's house. He rich. Break us off some money. Can't you get some money for us? Break us off some gold. You ain't gonna get no gold for us. You know he telling you. He saying forget them. He said, how you gonna be with me? You giving gold and things in my household to darkness. To darkness. Not to light, or you giving it to darkness. You know what he said? He says, for I have come to set a man against his father, because he's been separated by the sword. And a daughter against her mother. He said, because you've been separated. He said, forget your father's house, forget your father's house and your people. And guess what he said? He's talking about this amongst the people of Yasharal. He said, forget them. And the Malak king will desire your beauty, because I separate from light from darkness. Because everybody ain't a light. For I have come to set a man against his father, and a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. He said, I don't separate the light from darkness. I badal, as it was in the beginning. And get what it says, and a person's enemies will be those of his own household. He's that men servant, maid servant, ox, donkey, house, wife, husband, children. All these are a part of your household. Part of his household. But guess what it says? Verse 37, whosoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. He said the king ain't going to desire your beauty. Yahushua Mashiach is not going to desire your beauty. He said, whosoever loves mother or father more than me is not worthy of me. So you think about that. There ain't no way. I want all the love. I want more love that you give than you give to your mother and your father. That's how Yahushua think. That's how Yahushua gonna desire your beauty. He said, and that's how. And you think about a marriage. He said that's how a marriage actually should be. He said, you love more than I do, more than me. So you think about it, how Yahuwah is. He's so jealous. He like you. So you love somebody. I'm your husband. So you love somebody. You love them more than me. Whoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. And whosoever loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. Yahushua is like, I will not desire your beauty. I don't care how beautiful you are. I don't care how much you decked your inward man and your outward. I don't care how you look. He said, if you love them more than me, I will never desire your beauty. And you know what he says right here? He said, more than me is not worthy of me. And whosoever does not take up his totality, his sign, signature, exit, four corners. You know, the two, you know how he said, I am the olive. I'm the one that's strength and strong, right? I'm the strong person, lead about 1,000. I'm the Malak, the king. I'm the olive. And you the two. And whosoever does not take up his cross and follow me, his totality, and follow me is not worthy of me. He said, you ain't worthy of me. You see everything I just did? I just made you back alive. I revived you. Whoever finds his life will lose it. And whosoever loses his life for my sake will find it. You will find life with me, Yahushua Mashiach. Because you forget your father's house and your people, and guess what you did? You cleave to me. And you know what happens after that? I will desire your beauty. And you'll be sitting at my right hand. And I'll be holding you with your left hand. And we'll be an olive in the car together. Verse 40 says, whosoever receives you receives me. Whosoever receives me receives him who sent me. The one who receives a Nabi because he is a Nabi will receive a Nabi reward. And the one who receives a righteous person because he is a righteous person will receive a righteous person reward. Right, he said, so you want me to desire your beauty, but for some reason you want to be with somebody else, right? He said, so here we go. This is the book of Exodus. Right, we almost finished. Right, this is the book of Exodus. Real quick, right? This is the book. This is the book of Exodus. This is the book of Exodus, chapter. I think it's Exodus chapter 23 and verse 23. Should move to Exodus chapter 23, verse 23. Exodus chapter 23, verse 23. It says, when my Malak goes before you and brings you to the Amorites and the Hittites and the Perizzites and the Canaanites and the Hivites and the Jebusites, and I blot them out, you shall not bow down to their Allahims, their gods, nor serve them. And you know what he says? Nor do as they do. But you shall utterly overthrow them and break their pillars in pieces. You shall serve Yahuwah, your Elohim, and he will barak your bread and your water, and I will take sickness from among you. He said, I'm going to take the sickness from among you. Because that's once you got to let go of, you got to forget the things that you used to do before. And then I'm going to barak your bread and your water, and then you're going to eat it, and then I'm going to take sickness out of your body. Because then you're going to need sickness out of your body. And you know what sickness out of your body entails? It entails the things you refuse to forget. It's inside of the things you refuse to forget. It's a part of it, right? Right. So this is the book of Numbers. Book of Numbers. The book of Numbers, chapter 20. The Midbar, chapter 20, and verse 1. The Midbar, chapter 20, and verse 1. It says, and the people of Yasharal, the whole congregation came into the wilderness of Zin in the first month, and the people said to Chdsh, and the people stayed in Chdsh. And Miriam died there and was buried there. Now there was no more water for the people. And they assembled themselves together against Mashah and against Aharon. And the people quarreled with Mashah and said, would that we had perished when our brothers perished before Yahuwah. Why have you brought the assembly of Yahuwah into this wilderness, that we should die here, both we and our cattle? And why, say what? Both we and our cattle. And why have you made us come up out of Mizraim to bring us to this evil place? It is no place of grain. It's because it's a desert. Or figs, or vines, or pomegranates, and there is no water to drink. Man, they real dry. You know, like dry bones. They real dry. And get what he said. And Moshe and Harun went to the presence of the assembly of the entrance of the tent meeting and fell on their faces. And the Kabbalah of Yahuwah appeared, and Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, take the staff of the assemble of the congregation, you and Harun, your brothers, and tell the rock before their eyes to yield its water. He said, take the staff and tell the rock. Speak to the rock and tell it to yield its water. So you shall bring water out of the rock for them and give drink to the congregation and their cattle. And Moshe took the staff from before Yahuwah as he commanded him. He said he did that. And then Moshe and Aaron gathered the assembly before the rock, and he said to them, hear now, you rebels, shall we bring water for you out of this rock? And Moshe lifted up his hand and struck the rock with his staff twice. Now, why you think what happened after that? Why do you think he did that? Because he ain't listened to the voice of Yahuwah the first time. He told him to speak to the rock. All he had to do is speak. That's what he told Yakaziel. And Yakaziel obeyed. And you know what happened after that? The bones revived. And skin came on them and sinews. But Moshe hit the rock, opposite of what Yahuwah said. And he says, and the waters came out abundantly in the congregation, and they drank in their livestock. And Yahuwah said to Moshe and Aaron, because you did not believe in me. He said, you ain't believe in me. You ain't believe, did you? You ain't believe in me. You know what happened after that? To uphold me as Chdsh in your eyes of the people of Yasharal. Therefore, you shall not bring this assembly into the land that I had given them, because you did not speak like I told you to. You did something physical that any man probably could do. You hit the rock and smite it open. You didn't speak to the bar and let them know that man should not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes out of the mouth of Yahuwah. You did not speak, so therefore they thought it was your hand that did it, and not mine. And all that took place. He said, you ain't believe me, which means you ain't forget your lovers. You ain't forget your people. And you ain't forget your father's house. You ain't believe in me, did you? You didn't believe in me, right? Right, so this is the book of, we almost finished. This is the book of Exodus, chapter 11. No, Numbers chapter 11, Bamidbar chapter 11. Numbers chapter 11 and verse 4. It says, now the rebels that was among them have a strong craving. And the people of Yasharal also wept again and said, oh, that we had meat to eat. We remember. He said, man, forget your father's house and your people, and the king will desire your beauty. He said, we remember. That's the problem. We remember. It's some things you need to forget, because it's going to hold you back from the Malak, the king, Yahusha, desiring your beauty. Because he ain't going to desire you. It's some things you got to forget. And it says, oh, that we had meat to eat. It's some things you're going to have to forget. We remember the fish we ate in Mizraim that cost nothing. We just talked about Yahushua said, I'm going to give you salvation, ain't going to cost you nothing. You can go outside and you can breathe the air and it don't cost you nothing. He said, buy from me and get water to drink, and it don't cost you nothing. But he said, man, they gave us free food. You know how you get free food? Well, they gave us free fish. It cost us nothing. The cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, and the garlic. Then we just talking about the fourth Oswald. He said the price is going to be so low, they might even give you food for free. And you're going to be thinking shalom and peace on earth. You know how to say peace? That's what they thought. But now our strength is dried up. Oh, just like the dry bones? But you know why he did that. He needed to dry you out. So you will need him. But it said right here, and there is nothing at all but this manna to look at. This mon, that's it. Now the manna was like coriander seed, and its appearance is like that of bdellium. And the people went about and gathered it and ground it in hand mills, or beat it in mortars and boiled it in pots and made cakes of it. And the taste of it was like the taste of a cake boiled with oil. And when the dew fell upon the camp in the night, the manna fell with it. So now he's saying, forget your father's house and your people, and the king will desire your beauty. He said, but you can't forget it. Right, this is the book of Bereshit, Genesis. This is Bereshit, Genesis chapter 16 and verse 1. Actually, go to... Yeah, this is Bereshit, Genesis chapter 20. I think it's 20. No, we can go to 22. Bereshit chapter 22. Genesis chapter 22 and verse 1. After these things, Elohim tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham. And he said, here I am. And he said, take your son, your only son, Yitzhak, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah and offer him as a burnt offering on one of the mountains, which I shall tell you. He's like, then now you see how Yahuwah thinks. He's like, man, you gotta forget a lot of things when it comes to him. And it says, so Abraham rose early in the morning and saddled his donkey and took 2 of his young men with him and his son Yitzhak, and he cut the wood and for the burnt offering, and arose and went to the place which Elohim had told him. And on the 3rd day, Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place from afar. And Abraham said to the young men, stay here with the donkey, and I and the boy will go over there and worship and come again to you. And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid his son Yitzhak, and he took his hand and the fire and the knife. So they went both to them together, and Yitzhak said to his father, Abba, my father. And he said, here I am, my son. He said, here I am, my son. He said, behold the fire, the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? And Abraham said, go, Elohim will provide himself a lamb for a burnt offering, my son. So they went both of them together. Right, and going to verse 9. And when they came to the place which Elohim had told them, Abraham built the altar there and laid the wood in order and bound Yitzhak his son and laid him on the altar on the top of the wood. And then Abraham reached out his hand and took the knife to slaughter his son. But the Malach of Yahuwah called to him from Shalim and said, Abraham, Abraham. He said, here am I. And he said, do not lay your hand on the boy and do anything to him. For I know that you fear Elohim, seeing that you have not withheld your only son from me. He said, that's how you know Yahuwah desired him. He said, forget your father's house and your people, and the king will desire your beauty. He was willing to offer up his only son. He said, he that loveth his son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. Why do you think the king desired his beauty? Why do you think the king desired the bride of Mashiach? Why do you think he tells us how he say, forget things that he may desire your beauty? He said, that's the only way he's going to desire you. He said, that's the only way. He said, that's the only way, right? So this is the book of Genesis. This is the book of Genesis. Yeah, this is the book of Genesis chapter 20, I think it's 32. Yeah, Bereshit, Genesis chapter 25. Bereshit, Genesis chapter 25. Actually, go to Bereshit chapter 24, verse 50. Genesis chapter 24, verse 50. Bereshit, Genesis 24, verse 50. And it says, Then Laban and Bethuel answered and said, This thing has come from Yahuwah. We cannot speak to you good or bad. Behold, Rebekah is before you. Take her and go, and let her be the wife of his master's son, and as Yahuwah has spoken. And when Abraham's servant heard their words, he bowed himself to the earth and before Yahuwah. And the servant brought out jewelry and silver and gold and garments and gave them to Rebekah. He also gave her brother and her mother costly ornaments. And he and the men who were with him ate and drank, and they spent the night. And they rose in the morning and said, Send me away to my master. Her brother and her mother said, Let the young woman remain with us while at least 10 days. After that, then she may go. But he said to them, Do not delay, since Yahuwah has proposed my way. Send me away that I may go to my master. And they said, Let us call the young woman and ask her. Let's ask her. And they called Rebekah, and said to her, Will you go with this man? Will you forget us in your father's house? And go with this man, that the king may desire your beauty? And you know what happened after that? Will you go with this man? She said, I will go. He said, I will go. And you know what happened? So they sent away Rebekah, their sister, and her nurse, and Abraham's servant, and his men. And they barak Rebekah and said to her, Our sister, may you become thousands of 10,000s, and may your offspring possess the gate of those who hate him. He said, that's the only way you're going to, how you say, that's the only way that a Malak king going to desire your beauty. You're going to have to forget your father's house and your people. And then Rebekah and her young women arose and rode on the camels and followed the man. Thus the servant took Rebekah and went his way. Now Yitzhak returned from Beth-Ori and was dwelling in Negeb, and Yitzhak went out to meditate in the field toward evening. And he lifted up his eyes and saw that, behold, there was camels coming. And Rebekah lifted up her eyes, and when she saw Yitzhak, she mounted from the camel and said to the servants, Who is that man walking in the fields to meet us? The servant said, It is my master. It is my master. He said, Bow to him, for he is your master. But you had to do some things before that. He said, you got to forget. Then you have to, he said, then the king will desire your beauty. He said, bow to him, for he's your master. So she took her veil and covered herself. And the servant told Yitzhak all the things that he had done. Then Yitzhak brought her into the tent of Sarah, his mother, and took Rebekah, and she became his wife, and he loved her. Because she was willing to leave her people and her father's house and be his Ishah. That's why he loved her, and he desired her beauty. So Yitzhak was comforted after his mother's death, right? All that's a part of it. All that's a part of it, right? All that's a part of it, right? So this is the book of Bereshit, chapter 2, and verse 25. Bereshit, chapter 2, verse 24. Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his Ishah, and they shall be one flesh. Therefore a woman shall leave her father and her mother and hold fast to her husband, and they shall be one flesh. Or the king ain't going to desire your beauty. They're not going to desire you. Because he said you can't forget things that were behind. Right, so this is the book of This is the book of 1 Corinthians Philippians chapter 3, verse 12. Philippians chapter 3, verse 12. Not that I have already obtained this, or I am already perfect, but I press on to make it my own, because Mashiach Yahusha has made me his own. He like, you want him to desire your beauty? You want him to desire you? Brothers, I do not consider that I have made it my own, and sisters, but one thing I do, forgetting what lies behind me. What does he mean by that? And straining toward what lies ahead. Why? Because when you don't forget the things that are behind, you don't forget certain things, and Yahusha bedaws you, you know what happens? You can hinder him from doing what he needs to do. And then you'll be like somebody. Right? That's why, right? This is what happens, right? This is the book of, because what were those people in the wilderness? This is your Ukanan. This is your Ukanan. Actually, here we go. Yeah, this is the Ukanan chapter 8 and verse 1. Now, see, go to, Ukanan chapter 8, verse 1. Ukanan chapter 8 and verse 1. Ukanan chapter 8 and verse 1. Ukanan chapter 8, verse 1. John chapter 8, verse 1. It says, they went each to his own house, but Yahusha went to the Mount of Olives early in the morning, and he came again to the temple. And all the people came to him, and he sat down and taught them. And the scribes and the Pharisees brought a woman who was caught in the very act, caught in adultery, and placing her in the midst. And they said to him, Teacher, this woman has been caught in the act of adultery. Now, in the Torah, law of Moshe, commanded us to stone such a woman. So what do you say? This they said to test him. You know what happened? That they might have some charge to bring against him. That's the only reason they do it. You know what happened? Yahusha bent down and wrote with his finger on the ground. And as they continued to ask him, he stood up and said to them, let him who is without sin among you be the first to throw a stone at her. So you look at Pharaoh saying, please forgive me of my sins just this one time and deliver me from this death, right? That's all we wanted. But you ask yourself how many times you had to say, forgive me for my sins. Forgive me for my sins. Even after Yahusha died, rose and ascended, and you understand it. And it says, at once more, he bent down and wrote to the ground. He did it twice. Amazingly, how many times did Moshe hit the rock? Moshe hit it twice. He said, you ain't bringing my people in the land. You ain't going in. I can't have you leading people and you can't even do one little simple thing. It's just real simple. Just speak to the rock and say, yield some water. That's all you had to do. But you couldn't do that. Why? You got to do something else. You got to do something extra. You got to do 5 weeks instead of 7 weeks. And it said right here, at once more, he bent down and rolled on the ground. And when they heard it, they went away one by one. And when they heard he without sin, they went away one by one. Isn't that what a Akkad means? Akkad means one by one, which means they were one. At this moment, they were one. Akkad. One by one. That's what Akkad means. But they didn't know that he was separating light from darkness, and he was the light in the beginning, and they were darkness. They were the dead ones. They were the dead ones that he separated, badal, light from darkness. They were the dead ones, and he separated them with his sword of his mouth. And by separating with the sword of his mouth, he showed you who was light and who was darkness. And one by one, they were Akkad, and then they left one by one. And you know what happened? Beginning with the older ones, then the older ones. You know, the older ones. And you know what happened after that? And Yahusha was left alone with the woman. He was left alone with who? With the Isha. And amazing, why he was left alone? Why do you think he was left alone with the woman? I'm going to show you. Standing before him, and Yahusha stood up and said to her, "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" He said, "Where they at?" He said, "Where they at?" You know, that's what you should, when you start to see this world and how it is and how people are, you be like, "Where they at to condemn you?" And you know what he said? She said, "No one, Master." He said, "No one is here." And Yahusha said, "Neither do I condemn you. Go now on, sin no more." What is he saying to her? Forget, and I will desire your beauty. Forget. He said, "And bow to him, and he will be your master." And you know what he said in verse 12? And again, Yahusha spoke to them, saying, "I am the light of the world." I'm just like it was in the beginning. I separate light from darkness. And you know what he said? "Whosoever follows me will not walk in darkness." He's literally telling you what he is. He said, "You ain't gonna be dead. You're gonna be a dead one. I separate light from darkness. People who are alive and who are not. But will have the light of life, the ore of life." Kain Nefesh. You know what they say? You know when you start saying stuff like this? Verse 13. "So the Pharisees said to him, 'You are bearing witnessing about yourself. You make yourself an Elohim. You think you somebody.'" You know what he says? He said, "You yourself bear witness about yourself. Your testimony is not true." He said, "Everything you saying is a lie." Yahusha answered, "Even if I do bear witness about myself, my testimony is true. For I know where I came from." He said, "I know who I am." You know how he said, you got to know who you are. He said, I know where I come from and where I am going, but you do not know where you do not know where I come from and where I am going. You know why he said it? Just like Proverbs, Shaly'shy, chapter 30 said. He said, "I'm too stupid to know what I mean." He said, who has ascended? Who gathered the waters in the garment? What's his name? What's his son? What's his name? What's his son's father's name? What's his name, if you can tell me? I don't even know. He said, "You don't know where you're going. You judge me according to the flesh. I judge no one according to the flesh. Yet even if I do judge, my judgment is true, for it is not I alone who judge, but I the Father who sent me." Right? So this is the book of Genesis chapter 6 and verse 1. Actually, book of Genesis chapter 3. Book of Genesis chapter 3 and verse Book of Genesis chapter 3 and verse 22. Bereshit chapter 3 verse 22. Bereshit chapter 3 verse 22. "Then Yahuwah said, Behold, the man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil." He said he know good and evil. "Now lest he reach out his hand and take from the tree of life and eat and live forever. Therefore Yahuwah Elohim sent him out of the Gan of Eden to work the ground from which he was taken." He did what? To work the ground from which he was taken. "And he drove out the man at the east of Eden, and he placed cherubims with a flaming sword turned every way to guard the way of the tree of life." What happened? What happened to the men that when he swung his sword in the midst of them, and they was trying to cast judgment on the woman? He slung his sword, and all of them departed, and he drove them all away. He drove them all away because he was able to discern between good and evil. He said, "I can see your heart. I can see all your heart. Y'all trying to condemn this woman for committing adultery, but yet you yourself got stuff you got in your life that you ain't did. So therefore, I just put my sword in the middle of it to keep the way of the tree of life. You go your way. Go that way." Everybody went that way. And you know what he did? And he told the woman, go and sin no more. From now on. And he forgave the woman for her sin. He just kept away the tree of life. He just gave her life. Because she was supposed to get death. He gave her life though. You know what happened after that? And he did that what? And he drove out the man at the east of the Aydah, and he placed in the Caribbean and a flaming sword that turned every way to guard the way of the tree of life. Why did he guard the way of the tree of life? He said, guard the way of the tree of life. What's Kuah name mean? Mother of all living. So what is the tree of life? The tree of life is a, how you say it? The feminine nature. It's feminine. Why do you think he told the woman, go and sin no more? From now on. Because it's feminine nature. He was guarding away the tree of life. Because the tree of life is a feminine tree. It's a female tree. He said, how you know it's a female tree? You know, like the scribes and the Pharisees would say. Because a lot of the scribes and the Pharisees said that this is Proverbs chapter 3. This is Proverbs chapter 3 and verse, Proverbs chapter 3 and verse, I think it's, Proverbs chapter 3 and verse 13. Actually, Proverbs chapter 3, verse 13. 3:13. Barak is the one who finds wisdom and the one who gets understanding. For gain of her, that's feminine. For gain of her is better than the gain of silver, and her profit better than gold. She is more precious than jewels, and nothing you desire can compare with her. He said nothing you desire can compare with her. Why do you think he told her, forget your people and your father's house, and the king will desire your beauty? And bow to him, for he is your master. He says, long life is in her right hand. In what? In her right hand. Her yard. It says, and in her left hand are riches and honor. Why do you think he told him, he said, I'll take you by the right hand? He said, I hold in my right hand, I'll lead you out of Mizraim. Matter of fact, take me by my right hand, and your left hand will be in my hand. And you'll be in my hand. So I have my right hand out, you hold me with your left hand. And you know what happens after that? We be the Kaf and the Yah together. And you know what he says? Long life is in her right hand, and her left hand are riches and honor. He said, you know what happens when two become one? When you do that, when you forget your people and your people in your father's house, and you join me as one. You know that's what comes with it when you join together as one. And you know what happens after that? And you know what happens after that? And in her right hand are riches and honor. Her ways are the ways of pleasantness, and all her paths are peace. Why do you think Yahushua said, I'm the Sar, the Nisa of peace, of Shalom? He gave that woman peace. They were. You see all the things that people were doing? They were getting ready to kill her. This woman was caught in the very act. He said, go and sin no more. He gave him peace. He gave her Shalom. Her ways are the ways of pleasantness, and her paths are peace. What happened? She is a tree of life. He said, how do you know she a feminine tree? He guarding the way of the tree of life. Why do you think he did that? She is a tree of life to those who lay hold of her. To wisdom, Hakmah. Those who hold her fast are called blessed. He said, those who hold her fast are called blessed. Barak. And you say, why would you get rid of the feminine nature? Because none of this will make sense without it. None of it. None of it. Right, so this is the book of Revelation, Hazun, chapter 22, verse 1. Revelations, Hazun, chapter 22, verse 1. Revelation, Hazun, chapter 22, verse 1. Then the Malak showed me the rivers of water of life. The water of life mean, because that's how you going to get life without water. How the dry bones going to live? They were dry. As rain and snow come down from Shabath, so did the Barbie that goes down about how you gonna live. And it says, bright as crystal. That's the meme. That's the 13th letter of the alphabet. That's what water is, meme. Flowing from the throne of Yahuwah, the Elohim. It's flowing from the Chdsh, from the throne, the sapphire throne. You know, blue water. You know what I say? And of the Lamb, of Yahusha. Because he's sitting at his right hand. And it says, through the middle of the street of the city, also on either side of the river, the tree of life. Oh, you mean the feminine tree? You mean Hakma, wisdom? You mean the feminine tree? So how you going to get salvation without the feminine nature? How? How you going to get an eternal life without the female? The feminine nature, the female tree, you know, the wisdom. She is like a tree of life. That's what wisdom is. She is the tree of life. How you going to get eternal life? And it says, with its 12 kinds of fruit, what type of rejoice thou bear that bears not? Because a woman bears fruit. That's what children are. Be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. How are you going to do that without a female? How are the animals going to become one? And you can't see a creeping thing in North America, in one country, and go to another one without two becoming one. You can't see a baby giraffe or a baby elephant or a baby calf without a female and female two becoming one. You can't even produce fruit without a female tree. And it says yielding fruit each month. He said yielding fruit each month. That means that tree keep producing, which means it's a continual fruit-bearing tree. Feminine tree. And guess what happens after that? The leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. How people gonna get healed? You need the feminine nature in order for how the nation gonna be healed without the feminine nature, both male and female? How is that even possible? How are you the healing of the nations? How? How are you the healing of the nations? No longer will they, he says, no longer will they be accursed, but the throne of Elohim and the Lamb will be in it, and his servants will worship him. He will do what? You know why they will worship him? Because they forget their family, they forget their people in their father's house, and the king gonna desire their beauty. And he said, bow to him, for he is your master. It says, and they will see his face, Panim, and his name will be on their foreheads. His name is going to be in their frontal lobe, in their foreheads. And night will be no more. And lately, you know, darkness. He said, who should say, he that believes on me, you will no longer walk in darkness, but you will have the light of life. What do you think the tree of life is? It's the light of life, the ore. And get what it says. And they will need no light of the lamp, of the menorah or the sun. For Yahuwah Elohim will be their light, the light of life. And they will reign forever and ever, without end. He said, she is the tree of life, right? Right, so this is the book of, this is the Nazarene Asher the Shalakim. We almost finished it. This is the last couple things. Nazarene Asher the Shalakim, page 146. chapter, I think it's page 146, chapter XXXVII, that's 27. And as we after the shaly'shy creation takes, right, and it says right here, verse 146. But this also I would have you know, that upon such beings Elohim does not take vengeance directly, but his whole creation rises up and inflicts punishment upon the immoral. Although in the present world the goodness of Yahuwah bestows the light of the world and the services of the earth alike upon the obedient and the disobedient. You know what happens after that? Yet not without grief does the sun afford his light, and the other elements perform their service to the disobedient. And in short, sometimes even in opposition to the goodness of the Creator, the elements are wearied by the crimes of the immoral. We read that in the Apocalypse of Shaul and Paul, right? The Testament of Paul. He said, it's immoral. And from there, it is that either the fruit of the earth is blighted, or the composition of the air is corrupted, or the heat of the sun is increased beyond measure. Isn't that what's happening now? Why do you think you get a heat wave and it's like 110 degrees? People say, what? Man, it's like 120 degrees, because that's the Shemesh. They're getting tired of people. They executing judge. The elements start doing things. You know what happens after that? For there, it says right there, and it says, increase beyond measure. And there is an excessive amount of rain or of cold, because they're executing judgment on the earth. The elements are. You know, man, they ain't stopped raining yet. 3 feet of water come out of nowhere. Man, it seems like it's hot everywhere, and it's cold here, though. It says, from there, pestilence and famine and death in various forms stalk forth. Here we go. For the creation hastens to take vengeance on the immoral. That's what they tired of. The creation. They alive. People say, the sun is not alive. The moon is not alive. The wind, the rain, and all that stuff is alive. Yeah, it's alive. All that stuff is alive. Anything Yahuwah makes, it's the light of life. He made it with the light of life. It has life on it. And you know what happens after that? Yet the goodness of Elohim Yahuwah restrains it. It's all up to him. You know what happens after that? Bridles its indignation against the immoral. Please don't be thinking like, oh yeah, you know, they're all joyful and they want to shine and all that stuff. You know how people say? Believe me, they don't like looking at all the wickedness and the immoral things that's taken on the earth. They don't like looking at it. They looking at you, but you don't understand. Your perception ain't open, because they can see you. You know what happens after that? And compels it to be obedient to his mercy rather than to be inflamed by sins and the crimes of men. That's how you gotta. You know, we get inflamed and angry because people can't understand it, and then you say, "No, you can't be like that." You got to be able to restrain and yield yourself and stop, because Yahuwah is compassionate, forgiving sins, transgressions, and iniquities. Just like he forgave the woman who he was guarding away the tree of life and the feminine tree. He was trying to help people understand. And you know what happens after that? It says, to his mercy rather than to be inflamed by the sins and the crimes of men. For the patience of Yahuwah Elohim waits for the conversion of men as long as they are in this body. He said he waits. So what he waiting for? For people to come to the realization of who they really are. He said he waiting for that. Right, this is the truth of the Qahalath 12. The gospel of the Holy 12, the gospel of the truth of the Qahalath 12. Lection 47. Lection 47 and 5. Lection 47 and 5. Again, ye have been told, thou shalt not commit adultery. This 47 and 5. Lection 47 and 5. But I say to you, if a man or woman join together in marriage with unhealthy bodies and beget unhealthy offspring, they are guilty, even though they have not taken their neighbor's spouse. He said, if you unhealthy in body and you join together as one and you create a child that's unhealthy, he said you are guilty. He said, why would he say that? Why would he say that? He said, why would he say that? And then it says right here, he said, you are guilty of taking your neighbor's spouse. And if any have taken a woman who belonged to another, but desire in their heart and seek after her, they have committed adultery already in Ruah, right? He said, so why would he say that? Right, so this is the book of, so this is the book of, yes, this is the book of Psalms 103, Psalms 103 and 1. Psalms 103 and 1. Psalms 103 and 1. Psalms 103 and 1. It says, Barak Yahuwah, O my soul, and all that is within me. Barak is Hudah's name. Barak Yahuwah, O my soul, and forget not all his benefits, who forgives all your iniquity. You know what he did to the woman who was in the act of adultery? Who heals all your diseases. You know, all those diseases that people be joining together. He said, if you diligently keep this and you don't worship none of these idols, Yahuwah will barak your bread and your water, and you don't do after the other people. And he said, you know what? I will remove sickness from among you. You know why he's going to remove sickness from among his bride? There's a reason why he wants to remove sickness from his bride. There's a reason why he's saying, I will heal all your diseases and forgive all your iniquity. There's a reason why he's saying this. They say, why he's saying this? All right, this is the Nazarenes. The truth of the Nazarenes, the gospel of the Nazarenes, the gospel of the Nazarenes, truth of the Nazarenes, chapter 46 and verse 9. Truth of the Nazarenes, chapter 46 and verse 9. It says, Hear, O Yasharal, Yahuwah, the Creator, is one, Akkad. Many are my seers and my Nabi'im. In me all live and move and have substance. Verse 10 says, Ye shall worship the one eternal, unbegotten Master, Creator, of whom all things are made. Verse 11 says, Ye shall not take away the life of any creature, not yet, nor yet torment it. Verse 12, Ye shall cherish and protect the weak, the oppressed, and all the creatures that suffer wrong. Wow, isn't that written in your Torah? Says you are Elohim? In Psalms 82, isn't that what he told us to do? You are God. You are Elohim. But what did he say? But he said, you shall not have no other gods before me, though. That's why he said, you got to forget your father's house and your people, and the king will desire your beauty. And you will bow to him, and he'll be your master. He said, you can't love them more than you love me. And it says, verse 13, You shall not eat the flesh, nor drink the blood of any slaughtered creature, nor yet anything which brings disorders to your health and your senses. Now you see why. He tell you, make sure you don't do after what the people do. Matter of fact, do this. Don't do this either. Right, this is the book of Ezekiel. There's a reason why he's telling you this. Right, this is the book of Ezekiel. This is the book of Ezekiel. This is the book of Ezekiel, chapter 4 and verse 9. He said, don't eat nothing that brings disorders to your body. Remember we talked about that he's going to barak your bread and your water if you don't worship idols? When he talked about it in 1 Kings chapter 13, he talked about the men of Elohim. Don't you eat bread and drink water in this place? Because you know the day you eat of it, it's going to bring disorders to your body. That's what happened to Adam and Kuhl. This is Ezekiel 4:9. And you shall take wheat and barley and beans and lentils and millets and emmers and put them in a single vessel and make your bread from them. During the number of your days that you lie on your side, 390 days you shall eat it. And your food that you shall eat shall be by weight, 20 shekels a day, and from day to day. And you shall eat it. And water you shall drink by measure, in 6 parts of a hin, for from day to day you shall drink. And you shall eat it as a barley cake, baking it in their sight on human dung. He's like, make sure you don't eat nothing that brings disorders to your body. Why would he say bring it with human dung? Why would you eat that? You know why? And Yahuwah said, thus shall the people of Yashral eat their bread unclean among the nations where I did drive them. Why? Because they worship idols. The book of Shemuz already told you, he worship idols. He supposed to barak their bread and their water. You don't do after what the nations do. And then you don't eat. You don't worship their idols. But guess what happens? It says, thus shall the people of Yashral eat their bread unclean among the nations where I drive them. Then I said, Yahuwah Elohim, behold, I have never defiled myself. From my youth till now, I have never eaten what died of itself or was torn by beasts, nor has tainted meat come into my mouth. Then he said to me, see. He said, see. I, as a sign to you, cow's dung instead of human dung, on which you may prepare your bread. Moreover, he said to me, son of man, behold, I will break the supply of bread in Jerusalem. Isn't that what he told Adam, you're going to eat lakam to the day of death. He says that they shall eat. He said, I shall break the supply of bread in Jerusalem. They shall eat bread by weight with anxiety, and shall drink water by measure in dismay. And I will do this, that they may lack bread and water, and look to one another in dismay, and rot away because of their punishment. He said, you're going to rot away. You know why he said that? He said, don't eat nothing that brings disorders to your body. Right, this is the book of Matthew chapter 16. Matthew chapter 16 and verse 5. Matthew chapter 16 verse 5. And when the disciples reached the other side, they had forgotten to bring any bread. They forgot the lakam. You know, you need bread to get there, right? And Yahushua said to them, watch and beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. He said, man, you better watch what they put in their bread. He said, you better watch what they put in their bread. We're going to bring disorders to your body. You're going to bring sicknesses in your body. And then you're going to be joining the marriages with sicknesses in your body. And you're going to be bearing children with sicknesses in their body. Because I ain't removed the sicknesses from among you. And you know what happens after that? You think the king going to desire your beauty after that? And he said, Yahushua said to them, watch and beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And they began discussing among themselves, saying, we brought no bread. But Yahushua, aware of this, said, O ye of little Amunah, why are you discussing among yourselves the fact that you have no bread? He said he's going to break the supply of bread in Jerusalem. Do you not perceive, and do you not remember the 5 loaves and the 5,000 and how many baskets you gathered? Or of the 7 loaves for the 4,000 and how many baskets you gathered? Why are you talking about the supply of bread? Because remember, Yahushua bread is like, it rejuvenates. It's like, Yahoo bread when he was in the house with the woman. He said, but you don't want to eat their bread. Why you want to eat their bread? How is it you fail to understand? Because when Yahushua be talking, he said you got to understand what he be saying. How is it that you fail to understand that I did not speak about bread, right? Beware beware of the leaven of the scribes and the Pharisees, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees, then they understood that he did not tell them to beware of the leaven of the bread, but of the teaching of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Why? Because it's like dung, human dung. It's like human dung. It's like cow dung. And you know what happens after you eat cow dung and human dung? He said, you doo-doo. He said, you know what that's like? He said, you unclean. You know what happens after you get unclean? And now you bring sicknesses in your body. And then you join together in marriages with sicknesses in your body. And then what happens after that? You bear children with sickness in your body. And you know what happens after that? Right, so this is the book of, we almost finished, I know. This is the book of Malachi, this book of Malachi. This book of Malachi, chapter 1, verse 6. A son honors his father, and a servant his master. Malachi, chapter 1, verse 6. If I am a father, where is my honor? And if I'm a master, where is my fear? That's what humans want, their master, they want their fear and their stuff, right? I want to be master, I want my fear. But Yahuwah like, I'm a father, where my fear at? You got fathers and all this stuff? If I am a master, where is my fear? Says Yahuwah of hosts, you priests who despise my name. He said, I ain't telling you to beware. You think I'm talking about bread? But you say, how have we despised your name? He said, I'm gonna put my name in their foreheads. Didn't we just read that? You know what he says? Verse 7. By offering polluted food upon my altar. But you say, how have we polluted you? By saying that Yahuwah's table may be despised. He said, how is it that you said that? Right, going back in the Nazarene, actually the Gospel of Truth and Nazarenes, Gospel of Nazarenes, chapter 45 and verse 13. Ye shall not eat the flesh nor drink the blood of any slaughtered creature, nor yet anything which brings disorders to your health or senses. Ye shall eat the fruits and herbs of the earth, and working in the Torah, live long in the land. Ye shall not make impure marriages where love and health are not, nor yet corrupt yourselves or any creature. So he's literally telling you, he said, you want the king to desire your beauty? This is how the king gonna desire your beauty. Ye shall not make impure marriages, that's unhealthy bodies, where love and health are not. So no ahab, and then you join it together in marriage, in body, and you're sick, and you join together, and you create children. He said you're guilty of adultery. And then he says, you who join together, not in love, with that, what type of offspring are you going to produce? Right? What type of offspring you going to produce, right? This is the book of Malachi, chapter 3, verse 16. Malachi, chapter 3, verse 16. Actually, let's go to 4. Malachi 2:16. It's 2:16. Malachi 2 and 14. But you say, why does he not? Right, so this is the book of, here we go. Malachi 2:13. And this second thing you do, you cover Yahuwah's altar with tears, with weeping and groaning, because he no longer regards your offering or accepts it with favor from your hand. But you say, why does he not? Because Yahuwah was witness between you and the wife of your youth, to whom you have been faithless, though she is your companion and your wife by covenant. So why? Because how are you going to how you gonna offer something? How you want me to accept something from you when you got rid of the feminine nature? You got rid of the feminine nature. You know, wisdom, Hakma, that is the tree of life. Why would I accept something from you? You got rid of the feminine nature. He says, but you say, why does he not? Because Yahuwah was witness between you and the wife of your youth, the feminine nature, to whom you have been faithless, though she is your companion and your wife by bereaved. Did he not make them one with a portion of Ruach in their union? And what was Elohim seeking? Righteous offspring. Why? Because you're supposed to not join in marriages without love and health. Why? Because you ain't got no love and no health, you ain't going to produce righteous offspring when you marry. If you don't have no love in your heart, if you don't have no health and you got diseases in your body and you produce children, you are, he said, guilty of adultery. You're guilty of adultery. It's like you taking another man's wife. Because he's seeking after righteous offspring. And you can't produce righteous offspring without love and health. So that's why he says, don't worship their idols. Don't do what they do. Yahuwah barak your bread and your water. And you know what happens after that? He said, I'm going to remove sicknesses from among you. And you know what he says? He says, make sure. He says, and what Elohim was seeking, righteous offspring. So guard yourselves in your Ruach, and let not one of you be faithless to the wife of your youth. You can't get rid of the feminine nature. But that's the tree of life. For the man who does this does not love his wife, because you can't join in marriages without love and health. If you don't have a ha, you can't join all these marriages. I'm gonna get all these wives and you ain't got no love. And you know what it says? For the man who does not ahab his wife Isha, but divorces her, says Yahuwah, the Elohim of Yasharal, covers his garment with violence. Kamas. It covers your garment with damage. That's the reason why he destroyed the earth in Bereshit chapter 6. For the whole earth will fill with kamas because of you. Because there's no love in the earth. And there's no health in the body and love in marriages. Aha. It says, so guard yourselves in your Ruach. Because that's how he brought them back to life. The dry bones. You know, the ones without no water. He brought them back to life with the Ruach. And in your Ruach, and do not be faithless. And he said, do not be faithless, right? Right, and it says right here, going back to Nazarene Acts, Gospel of Nazarene, chapter 45, verse 17. Verse 16. Ye shall revere the teachers, you shall revere, it said, you shall revere your father and mother and all the teachers of righteousness. Because he said, my son, do not forget the commandment of your father and the teaching of your mother. He said, all the teachers of righteousness, because he's going to gather all in the garment. He covered me in the garment of righteousness. That's how he covered everybody in righteousness. Verse 17, and ye shall not bear false witness against, nor willfully deceive any, nor yet covet or steal their goods. You shall purify yourselves daily, and rest the Shabath day. You shall not do unto others as you would that should not be done unto you. Verse 20 says, and when the disciples heard these words, they smote upon their breasts, saying, wherein we have offended, O Yahuwah, forgive us. He said, forgive us. Why? And may thy wisdom, you know, the tree of life, love, because you know you can't join in marriage without love and health, and truth within us, incline our hearts to love and keep the Qahalath law, right? That's the only way. Because if you join together, if you don't join together in love and health, and you join in marriages, and you put away the feminine nature, just like Malachi said, you know what you do? He said, why should I accept something on the altar when you got with the wisdom? Why? Because you can't get rid of the feminine nature. You can't. There ain't no way. He said, how is the king going to desire your beauty? How are you going to produce righteous offspring when everybody have disorders all in their body? How? How? Right, so this is the book, this is the last thing, last couple things, and then we're done. This is the book of Ezekiel. Ezekiel chapter 36 and verse 1. Yekaziel chapter 36, verse 1. And you, son of Adam, prophesy now to the mountains of Yasharal, and say, O mountains of Yasharal, hear the word of Yahuwah. Thus says Yahuwah Elohim, because the enemy said to you, Aha, the ancient heights have become our possession. Therefore, Nabah, and say, Thus says Yahuwah Elohim, precisely because they made you desolate and crushed you from all sides, so that you became a possession for the rest of the Goyim. You became the talk and the evil gossip of people. Therefore, O mountains of Yasharal, hear the word of Yahuwah. Thus says Yahuwah Elohim, the mountains and the hills and the ravines and the valleys, the desolate wastes and the desert cities, which have become a prey and a derision for the rest of the Goyim, all around. Therefore, thus says Yahuwah Elohim, surely I have spoken in my hot jealousy against the rest of the Goyim, and against all Edom, who gave my land to themselves as a possession, with wholehearted joy and utter contempt, that they might make its pasture land a prey. Right? He did all that, right? Skipping over to verse 14. Therefore, you shall no longer devour people and no longer bereave your nation of children, declares Yahuwah Elohim. And I will not let you hear any more the reproach of the nations. And ye shall no longer bear the disgrace of the peoples, and no longer cause your nation to stumble, declares Yahuwah Elohim. Right? Right. This is the book of. This is the book of. This is the book of Jeremiah chapter 30 and verse 16. Jeremiah chapter 30 verse 16. Jeremiah chapter 30 verse 16. Therefore all who devour you shall be devoured, and all your foes, and every one of them shall go into captivity. Those who plunder you shall be plundered, and all who prey on you I will make a prey, for I will restore health to you. He said, forget not his benefits. I will restore health to you, because we just read joining in marriages without health and love. He said, I came to produce a righteous offspring. Creating children with unhealthy bodies with no love. That's a bad combination. I'm seeking righteous offspring. So for I will restore health to you, because you need your health back. And your wounds I will heal. You can't join in marriages with open wounds and no health in your body, declares Yahuwah, because they have called you an outcast. It is Saum for whom no one cares. Yahuwah said, I'll take the things that the things that you don't care about, the things they don't care about, and I'll make it new, right? He said, how are he gonna do that, right? This is the book of Ezekiel, chapter 16. This is the book of Ezekiel. This is the book of Ezekiel, chapter, I think it's 16. Yeah, 16 and verse 1. Ezekiel, Yekaziel, 16 and 1. It says, and the word of Yahuwah came to me, son of Adam, make known to Jerusalem her abominations, all her unhealthy ways, and her unhealthy mind, and her unhealthy bodies, and no love. And say, thus says Yahuwah Elohim to Jerusalem, your origin and your birth are the land of the Canaanites. Your father was an Amorite and your mother was a Hittite. Now you see why he tells you to forget your father's house and your people, and the king will desire your beauty. For he is your master, and bow to him. Why? Because the origin of your mother and your father and the people are Hittites. They have the behaviors of Hittites. And your mother, a Jebus, an Amorite and a Hittite. It says, and as for your birth, on the day you were born, your cord was not cut. Because you know why? Because there was no love and no health when they joined together in marriage and made you. Because Yahuwah has sicknesses in their body. And when they made you, they didn't have no health and no love in their marriage. And they created wicked offspring. And it was just like a man laying with another man's wife. And they had diseases in their body. That's why he tells you to forget. He said, the time of your birth, they ain't care nothing about you. Because if they did, they would have had healthy bodies. They would have had love. You know what happened? And it says, after your birth, on the day you were born, your cord was not cut, nor were you washed with water to cleanse you. They had no love in their heart. Nor rubbed with salt, nor wrapped with swaddling cloths. You weren't even covered in righteousness. You know, he gathered the water in a garment. He didn't gather, they ain't clothe you in righteousness. No, I pitied you. They didn't care. They didn't even love you. To do any of these things to you out of compassion for you. You know why? Why didn't you have no compassion? Because of the words they were speaking. Because you know a soft answer turns away anger, but grievous words stir up wrath. They had no compassion on you. But you know, Yahuwah, like, I remember they were only flesh. I remember. But you were cast out in an open field. They left you out there. They didn't care. For you were abhorred on the day you were born. That's why he tells you don't join in marriages without love and health. Because if you don't, you're gonna bring sickness in your body. You know it brings sickness. You know when you have no love and no health and love in your marriage, and one person loves mother and father more. You know what happens? They can't forget their people in their father's house. You know what happens? He said, "Why would the king desire your beauty? Why would you even marry that?" Because you know what happens when you have memories of your father's house and your people? You're going to want to go back. Why do you think they want to go back to Mizraim? Why do you think they had them cravings they want to go back? Why do you think Abraham said, don't take my son back there? When he told me to go get it in the shop. There's a reason why. But you were cast out in the open field, for you were abhorred on the day that you were born. When I passed by you, you were wallowing in your blood. And I said to you, in your blood, live. Kaya. That's what he told the dry bones. I'm going to put sinews and skin on you. I said, live. That's what he did to the woman who was caught in the very act of adultery. He said, man, when they bore you, you were wallowing in your blood. He said, I said, live. Go and sin no more. I said, live. I said to you, in your blood, live. When you came out of the womb, I said, live. You know what happened? I made you flourish like a plant in the field. That's what he did. But he said, I said, live. He said, I said, live. Right? So this is the last couple of things. This is going to back of Philippians, Ephesians chapter 5, verse 18. It says, and do not get drunk with wine, for that is debauchery, but be filled with the Ruach. Because that will give you life. If people say, why I ain't got the Ruach? What you thinking about? You thinking about that alcohol addiction you got? Addressing one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs. Why? Break forth into singing, thou that bearest not. He said, are you pregnant with a song yet? Singing and making melody to Yahuwah with your heart. Giving thanks always for everything to Elohim the Father in the name of our Master Yahushua Mashiach, submitting yourselves to one another out of reverence for Mashiach. He said, submitting yourselves. You know what happens? It says, wives, be subject to your own husbands as to the master. For the husband is the head of the wife, as Mashiach is the head of the body, and is himself its savior. Now, as the Mashiach is subject, now as the body is subject to Mashiach, so also the wives should be submitted in everything to their husbands. But it says right here, husbands, love your wives, because you can't join in marriage without love and health in your body. You can't. If you don't have health and love in your body, you're going to produce unhealthy, unloved offspring. And you're going to be casting them aside and leaving them out and not even covering them in righteousness. You're not. And then you're going to be divorcing your wife for no reason at all. And you're going to be getting rid of the feminine nature. And you're supposed to guard the way of the tree of life. The feminine tree. That produces fruit for eternal life. And you're going to have no wisdom in your heart. And everything will be torn apart. And if the woman don't forget her father's house and her people, you know what happens after that? She's going to want to return back. And go back to Mizraim. And she's going to remember all the things that they did for her too. And it was given to her for free. Because when you're in your father's house, you know what happens. They give you food for free. And you know what happens after that? She's going to love you more than them. But she's going to love them more than you. You know what happens after that? The king ain't going to desire her beauty anymore. And you know what happens after that? Divorce. That's why you can't join into a marriage without marriage, without love and health. And Mashiach loved the body and gave himself up for her, that he might sanctify her, that he may guard the way of the tree of life, having cleansed her, by the washing of water with the debar. As rain and snow come down from Charmaine, he said, this dry bone, this bone is dead, right? He said, give it some water. This tree of life is dead. Give it some water. It ain't bearing no fruit. Give it some water. You're supposed to be like the bridegroom leaving his chamber. In there he said the sun is light. And get what it says. That he might sanctify her, and having cleansed her with the washing of the water by the bar, so that he might present to the body to himself in splendor, without spot or wrinkle or any such thing, that she might be Qhdsh and without blemish. You mean like a bride adorned for her husband? In the same way, husbands love their wives. He said, in the same way, husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. For no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as Mashiach does the body, because we are members of his body. Therefore, a man shall leave his father. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to Chdsh, and the two shall become one, a Echad. Therefore, a woman shall leave her father and mother and hold fast to her husband, and they two shall become a Echad. Because if you don't, the king ain't gonna desire your beauty, your beautiful face. He's not even gonna desire you, and you're not gonna bow to your master. Why would you be subject to anything he says? And you don't even believe Yahushua, your master, and you can't even forget the things which are behind you. This is a mystery and profound. I am saying that it refers to Mashiach in the body. However, let each one of you love his wife as himself, and let his wife see that she respects her husband. He said, why would he respect? Why would he say respect her husband? Right? He said respect, right? He said, why would he say that? Right? So why would he say that? Right? So this is a Nazarene, actually the shaly'shy, Dead Sea Scrolls. Right? Nazarene, actually the shaly'shy, Dead Sea Scrolls, column 4, Q 257. These are the paths in the world to enlighten the heart of Adam, man, a niche. Straighten out in front of him all paths of true justice. Establish in his heart respect for the precepts of Elohim. That's why it talks about women respect your husband, because these are all precepts and things that's already been said before. That's why you have to respect. You know why you got to do it? In the ruach of meekness, because the meek will inherit the earth. The kind ones. Of patience and generous compassion, eternal goodness, intelligence, understanding, potent wisdom, which trusts in all the deeds of Elohim and depends on his abundant mercy. A ruach of knowledge in all plans of action, of enthusiasm, decrees of justice, and set apart plans and firm purpose and generous compassion, with all the sons of truth, of a magnificent purity which detests all unclean items, of careful behavior and wisdom concerning everything. Because you get rid of wisdom, that's the tree of life. That's a feminine tree. You know, the fruit-bearing tree that bears fruit every single month. That's hakmah, that's wisdom. You get rid of wisdom, you get rid of Shah. In Malachi 2:16, he said you cover your garments with violence. You cut that with your sword, and you cut it off. And you weren't supposed to. So therefore, you just cut away wisdom. And you will say, why would you accept something on your altar when you just cut away the feminine nature? You know, that side that brings life. You bring death. You cut it off. You divorced it. And you dealt treacherously. Or a woman dealt treacherously and cut her husband off, right? All that's a part of it. Same thing, vice versa. Role reversals, right? That's a lot of things, people doing that today. Role reversals. They switch it around. They go from the parallel world. In this world, the man rules. In the other world, the woman rules. Or they switch it around and they go to the parallel world. They say the other part of the worlds. In this mass world, in these 12 worlds, and they said the 12 gates, you go to all these other different gates. And it said right here, a whole nother subject. And it says, and the ruach of knowledge in all plans of action, enthusiasm and decrees of justice, and set apart plans and firm purpose and generous compassion, with all the sons of truth, a magnificent purity, which attests all unclean idols. You know why you gotta detest all unclean idols? You gotta forget your father and your people in your father's house. Their origin was a Hittite and a Jebusite. And you're not supposed to do after them. Because you know why? He's going to barak your bread and your water if you don't worship their idols. Of careful behavior and wisdom concerning everything, of concealment concerning the truth of the mysteries of the knowledge, and these are the foundations of the ruach of the sons of truth in the world, and the reward of those who walk in it will be healing, because you can't join the marriages without health and love in your marriage. You can't join the marriage in a healthy bodies and produce unhealthy offspring. Will be healing. Because don't forget Yahuwah, all his benefits. He said, if you do this, I'll barak your bread and your water, and I'll remove all sickness from your body, and from you, from among you, if you forget. It will be healing, plentiful peace, and long life. Shalom. That's what wisdom is. You know what happens after that? Fruitful offspring with an everlasting barak. You have righteous offspring. They'll be fruitful and multiply. Because you know what happens when you two become in one healthy body, you create another healthy child, and they two become one, and you create this chain effect. And this lineage of healthy, productive people. And lineages. You know how they be saying, do you have thyroid cancer in your family? Do you have this in your family? Do you have a history of heart disease in your family? Do you have a history? Right? They start dying. They say, do you have a history of that? Because they know inside of your DNA code, you have disobedience to Yahuwah in your DNA. And they know that your sicknesses come in your body because you forsook the things he said in the beginning. You forsook the food that he told you to originally eat. You forsook the way he told you to originally walk, and walk in health and love. And you didn't reveal all righteousness. And then you didn't have no love in your heart. And you brought all disorders in your body. So they know that as long as you're still in that pattern, do you have a history of breast cancer? Amazingly, you have all this stuff going on in your heart, in your liver, in your liver, and your kidneys, in your mind. You have brain cancer. Do you have any types of things going on in your body? Because it all descend out from you. It comes through your DNA. You have prostate cancer. All this is all dealing with your reproductive organs. All this is all a part of it. It says, and the reward of those who walk in it, because if you walk in it, what happens when you walk in the beginning? Like he said in the beginning. Plentiful peace and long life, fruitful offspring with everlasting blessing, Barak, eternal enjoyment and endless life, and a crown of kabod and majestic raiment and eternal life. That's what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen to you. That's what's going to happen to your family lineage and your DNA code going all the way through to the rest of from your generation, the next generation before that. Why? Because when people start taking it seriously and not playing around, then it will produce a better, mindful, and understanding, and loving, and caring, and healthy generation next. Right? But however, the ruach of deceit belongs greed. Say what? He said it belongs greed. He said that's the ruach of deceit. He said the ruach of deceit belongs greed. He said, so out of all that, them the dead ones, right? Right? Because that's what he has to do. Because that's the poisonous ones. That is the poisonous one. Sluggishness in the service of justice, wickedness, falsehood, pride, haughtiness of heart, dishonesty, trickery, cruelty, much insecurity, impatience, much foolishness, impetuous enthusiasm for appalling acts performed in lustful passion. Why? Because this all creates disorders and sicknesses in your body. Because behaviors travel with your DNA code. Filthy past in the service of impurity. That's what happens. Blasphemous tongues. Then he said, then affect your speech patterns. The way you talk. Blindness of eyes, hardness of hearing, stiffness of neck, hardness of heart, in order to walk in the paths of darkness and evil cunning. Why would you? He said, you walk in the paths of darkness. And then Yahushua said, he said, you follow me, you no longer walk in darkness, but I give you the light of life. I'll give you the light of life. But if you don't want to follow Yahushua and follow his steps, you know what happens after that? In the visitation of those who walk in it will be abundance of afflictions at the hands of the Malachia of destruction and eternal damnation by the scorching wrath of Elohim that revenges, of permanent and terror and shame without end, and humiliation and destruction by the fire of the dark regions. That's what happens. Because he said, in your body, you have things that require and that attract these beings. All those things we talked about attract these beings in your life, in your family, in your mind, in your thoughts, all because you won't forget these things. He said you won't forget. He said you don't want to let it go. He said, man, you know why? Because it's in your DNA code. It's in your blood. He said you need a blood cleanser. And you know what he says right here? A permanent terror and shame without end humiliation, destruction, the fire of the dark regions, all the ages of the generations. They shall spend in bitter weeping and harsh evils in the abyss of the darkness until destruction, without there being a remnant or survivor for them. Why would there be a remnant and survivor for them? Because y'all have disorders in health in your body, and everybody dies early in your lineage. Y'all got a lot of history going on in your family. Right? And there's a reason. All of you, Ukanan 1, 2, 24 to 28. Let what you heard from the beginning abide in you. Why? Because that's the tree of life. You understand that the feminine nature, you can't get rid of that. For wisdom is such to your soul. Hakmah is the tree of life. And by getting it, it allows you to be cleansed from all your diseases. If what you heard from the beginning abides in you, in your parts, in your 12 cranial nerves, in your corpus callosum, in your eyes and your ears and your mouth, your nose, your spleen, inside of your heart and your spine, inside of your livers and your kidneys, in your heart, in your left and right ventricle, in your stomach, in your intestines, in your loins, guess what happens after that? He said, let it abide in you. He said, if what you heard from the beginning abides in you, then you too will abide in the Ben, the Son, the life of the house, and the Father, the strength of the house. And this is the promise he has made to us, eternal life. I write these things about those who are trying to deceive you. He said, they're trying to deceive you. You know what happens after that? But the anointing you receive from him abides in you. You have no need that anyone should teach you. Teach you what? But the anointing teaches you about everything, and it's true, and it's no lie, just as it has taught you, abide in him. So whatever you hear, he said do it, or you deceive yourself. And you bring disorders to your own body. And then guess what happens after that? You get the inheritance of the molecule of destruction. And you know what happens after that? And now, little children, abide in him, so that when he appears, you may have confidence and not shrink from him in shame at his coming. So why would he say that? Why would he say that? He said you won't shrink to shame, right? This is the last thing, and I'm done. This is the last thing. This is 60. Yeah, here we go. This is the book of Exodus. This is the book of Exodus. This is the book of Exodus. Chapter 22 and verse 20. Whosoever sacrifices to any god other than Yahuwah alone, they shall be devoted to destruction. Right? And you read about the molecule of destruction. And when you start offering to other Allahims and other gods, then you see the behaviors that come when you offer to other Allahims and other gods. And you know how you know it's in your behavior in the DNA, because somewhere in your line somebody worships gods. That's why some of those behaviors, he said, one continues to do. And when you say they have no fear of Allahim within their heart, then you understand how these things take place. So we look at all that. We look at Yahushua Mashiach. Look at a lot of life. How you say this is the 7th Shabbat. After 7 full weeks, counting towards Chag Shavuot, Feast of Weeks. And he said when the sun goes down, that's when it begins. Right? Just like it was in the beginning. For in 6 days you labor, in the 7th you rest. And after the 7th day, he said it becomes the first day again, a Chag. Knowing on the first day, and the Ruach moved upon the face of the waters, and Allahim said, let there be light and ore on the inside of man. Knowing that the light of life is Yahushua Mashiach. He said, I'll give you the light, the ore of life. You no longer walk in darkness, but your 7 eyes and your 7 ear will be lit. Even as it's after the 7th day, your 7 eyes and your 7 ear should be lit. Right, so he said the 14th day, Yom, in the 3rd month. We look at the 14th letter of the Aleph, we get life, resprout. We look at reviving our inner man. I say revive your inner man and your inner thoughts. Understanding that even Yahushua said, everything that we do, he said, do all to the kabod of Yahuwah and not to ourselves. And not to offer it to any other Allahims and any other gods on earth. Because if you do, then you will find yourself looking at destruction, and you'll be like, what must we do? And guess what you know what happens after that? He said, repent. That's all you're going to be thinking about. Because you look at this world today, everything y'all is all entailed around many other things, right? So this came to my mind. This is Yuchanan chapter 7. This is Yuchanan chapter 7. I think it's Yuchanan chapter 7. Yuchanan chapter 7 verse, I think it's 1. Next one. Yeah, Yuchanan chapter 7 verse 1. Yuchanan chapter 7 verse 1. And it says, after this, Yahushua went about in Galilee, and he would not go about in Judea because the Yahudim were seeking to kill him. Why? Now the Yahudim, he said, why were they seeking to kill him? Right here. This is the Yuchanan chapter 16. I think it's 16. Yuchanan chapter 16 and verse. Yuchanan chapter 15 and verse 1. Yuchanan chapter 15 and verse 1. It says, I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. He said, I'm the vine. We talked about how the vine was going to be decimated. But it talks about, I am the true vine. My Father is a vine dresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away. And every branch that does not bear fruit, he prunes. He cuts. That it may bear more fruit. That's why he does it. That it may bear more fruit. Why would he cut a tree to bear more fruit? Because you know, a tree of life is supposed to produce fruit every single month. And in order for it to keep bearing fruit every single month, it has to be pruned. Or it's not going to bear fruit every single month. And it says, that it may bear more fruit. Already you are clean by the word that I have spoken to you. Abide in me, and I in you, as the branch cannot bear fruit by itself. How do you know a branch can bear fruit by itself? Because it needs water. It needs the sun. It needs soil. It needs a whole bunch of things. There's no way you can bear fruit by yourself. There's no way. There ain't no way you can bear fruit by yourself. Pari. Because the fruit of the Ruach is, abide in me and I in you, as the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine. Neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. Whoever abides in me and I in him, he is that bears much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. He said, you can't even do nothing apart from me. You can do nothing. You can't even separate from and not do after the other people around you, the nations and the people. You can't do that. He said, you can't do nothing without me. Right? He said, you can't do nothing without me. Right? So he said, be ye doers of the word, not hearers only, deceiving your own self. But you can't do it without Yahushua Mashiach. So we look at everything that has happened, everything that's going to happen, and everything that he's getting ready to do. And we look within ourselves, and we judge within ourselves, and see if there be any wicked way, any wicked thoughts, or any wicked understandings, anything that may have resonance of things that one must forget, that the king may desire, the Malak may desire your beauty, knowing that these things are true, and we should not walk after the ways of our former life, and our former lust, and our former understanding, but to take on a new nature of the higher understanding of the higher thought process, of the higher frequency of the knowledge of Yahushua Mashiach, and the walk that transcends this natural plane of thinking in this plane of world, and to take on the knowledge of him as the one who gives life and understanding by his water, by his ming, and by he cleansing us from all our idols within our inner man by his pure water that comes from the throne, pure and crystal, that goes inside of our body and that purifies our organs in our body and our inward man from all our idols. So we look at ourselves, we look at our inner being, we look at our inner thoughts, and we follow his love and compassion and his humility. For the king can't desire our love, desire us in our beauty when we have sicknesses, we have things in our body. Also, we don't have no love in our heart. When we look at ourselves, we look at how much love in our heart. And we ask ourselves, is our love perfect? Is your ahab, the strength in your house, perfect? Right? Because that's the love that Yahushua desires. For the meek shall inherit the earth. The meek with love and health in their bodies will be married to Yahushua Mashiach. Let's pray right quick.